want to get both of your comments on Roy Moore. Samantha, you're from North Carolina.
I went to college in North Carolina. I grew up in West Virginia.
Oh.
I was born in Texas. Yeah. I'm a Southern girl.
So, which makes it even more relevant to talk about Roy Moore right now. Your thoughts about President Trump endorsing this accused pedophile, this accused child molester?
I was absolutely disgusted, but not surprised, because that's his MO. That is another testament to his character, to the person he is. And you know, it doesn't matter that women come out with evidence, and this is like, to make sure everybody knows, this is not a he said, she said thing. This is a he said, she verified what he said, and then he said that he didn't say that. So, you know, it's not a surprise that he came out for Roy Moore. But what I would love to see Republicans take a stand, because women's issues, the treatment of women, that's not a partisan issue. That's not something that only Democrats should believe in. This is something that every woman in America and every man in America needs to stand up and say, no, we are no longer accepting this type of behavior.
And Cecile Richards, I want to ask you about Roy Moore, especially the race in Alabama has gotten a lot of attention over the allegations against Moore of abusing young women, but also another big issue has been abortion and what Roy Moore's stand has been historically on abortion.
Right. Well, I think that Roy Moore, in an effort to distract any attention from his own behavior, is now trying to make extreme accusations against Doug Jones around the issue of abortion. What we've seen is actually that issue is not the primary issue in this race, and in fact, I think more women are drawn to be engaged in this race because of the support that Doug Jones has for women's rights. Look, the difficulty of this race and why I guess the president is down there and trying to prop this up is there's a huge partisan disadvantage. I mean, the fact that Doug Jones is even competitive in this race says how weak a candidate Roy Moore is and how desperate the Republicans are to win this Senate seat, that he has sitting members of the Senate willing to stand by a man who has been accused by so many women, including underage women, of sexual harassment and assault. It's absolutely astounding. And I was really glad to see Senator Jeff Flake, who I don't agree with on many things, but the fact that he is willing to say, actually, we have to put our country ahead of our party.
I wanted to play this clip from Meet the Press Daily with Chuck Todd. It's Doug Jones saying he's a firm believer that a woman should have the freedom to choose what happens to her own body.
I am a firm believer that a woman should have the freedom to choose what happens to her own body. And I'm going to stand up for that, and I'm going to make sure that that continues to happen. I want to make sure that as we go forward, people have access to contraception, they have access to the abortion that they might need. If that's what they choose to do, I think that that's going to be an issue that we can work with and talk to people about from both sides of the aisle. It's one of those
But you wouldn't legislate, so you wouldn't be in favor of legislation that said ban abortion after 20 weeks or something like that?
No, I'm not in favor of anything that is going to infringe on a woman's right and her freedom to choose. That's just the position that I've had for many years. It's the position I continue to have. But when those people, I want to make sure people understand that once a baby is born, I'm going to be there for that child. That's where I become a right-to-lifer.
That is Alabama Democratic senatorial candidate Doug Jones, who is competing right now against Roy Moore in today's election, the special election called for December 12th. Cecile Richards.
Right. I think that's what's important to understand is people in Alabama who are completely against women's access to safe and legal abortion, they're not voting for Doug Jones anyway. This is really not the issue. I think the important thing is what Mr. Jones says, which is people in this country believe, including in the South, and I'm from Texas too, they believe that a woman and her doctor should be the ones making decisions about her pregnancy, not the government, and certainly not the state legislature. And I got to believe for the majority of women in Alabama, certainly not Roy Moore.
And before Samantha leaves, as you were congratulating her, Cecile, you too came out a few days ago in Tina Brown's event in Texas when she asked you about whether you were ever sexually harassed or assaulted.
Sure. And I guess, Amy, I grew up in a time in which, of course, I remember my first job out of college or as an intern in the summer and being sexually assaulted by my boss. That was before a time that there was like, who are you supposed to say it to? Who are you supposed to report it to? And of course, I think we all think back now and say, I should have done more. And frankly, that's why I'm so incredibly proud of Samantha and the women who are risking taking on the President of the United States and telling their stories. And so I just want to say, on behalf of the millions of women around the country who have been assaulted, thank you and thank them for the courage.
Well, Cecile Richards, we'd like to ask you to stay with us to talk about the state of women and reproductive rights in this almost year under President Trump. And thanks so much, Samantha Halvey, for sharing your story today.
Thank you.
And bravely being a part of that news conference yesterday. Samantha Halvey is a former Miss USA contestant from North Carolina when Trump owned the pageant. She's one of 16 women who have accused President Trump of sexual misconduct. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we'll continue with Cecile Richards, the president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And then we'll be speaking with a man who serves something like 13 terms in office, who's announced he's resigning. We'll be speaking with Congressmember Luis Gutierrez. Stay with us.